Welcome back, Galaxy Brains. We are the Film Lovers Guide to the Galaxy. We are running a duo today since Jared and Frontier Communications couldn't figure that stuff
Fuck
out.
the internet.
Yeah, so Frontier, I think you might be losing a customer to Spectrum. Hey,
Yeah,
but if
seriously,
one of you guys want to sponsor us, that'd be highly
really
dope.
cool.
I will
Really
take
cool.
back. I will take back all the comments that I've made.
Yeah.
Today on our episode, we're going to talk two movies. We're actually going to talk about the latest horror movie from writer-director Parker Finn, Smile, that is out in theaters, and talking about BJ Novak, who most people know from The Office, who wrote, direct, and starred in his movie Vengeance. But before we do all that, you guys know how we start off this episode.
So I'm not gonna. The point of this rant is this. Let's say that costs you like 20 grand a year, okay? And the insurance covers 80. You're like, oh, it's a pretty good deal. Well, no, you have cancer.
What's the worst thing you'll do for $1 million?
Fuck you! Stop fucking dropping oil into the Gulf, you dipshits. Fucking morons.
What's grinding your gears this week, Joe?
Dude, a buddy of mine that you don't know he's into real estate. His whole business is just doing a bunch of real estate stuff, and in the sense that not as like a real estate agent, but like a renter person. Bro, the amount of bullshit he's dealing with squatters, like it's like this is in California, so I think squatter laws are like really on the side of California. So there's two things that happened to my friend and his friend. Let's start with his friend first. So she decided to do an Airbnb in her house, which I think is kind of weird. I guess she bought a house and had like 4 rooms, and she's like, let's rent out one room to, offset some of the mortgage. Like in paper, it sounds fine, right? So this is what happened, right? So she's also like, I think this is in like LA or something, but so she rents out the room, and then this lady that's like in her, I want to say her late 20s moves in. She goes, I want to get the Airbnb for 5 days. Like, okay, fine. She went there. The person kind of moved in. Just in that one room, did the Airbnb, and then the lady also had to go do some work and stuff. So she went to go do some work, like for a couple days, came back, and the lady was still there, like past the 5 days. And so she's like, "So what's up? Your thing's over." She's like, and the response was, "I'm not leaving. I'm just not gonna leave." So what the fuck do you mean you're not leaving? I'm just not leaving. And long story short, it takes like 3 months to evict them.
Yeah, because I think California is what, like 30 plus, then you got to fill the paperwork after that. Then it's like probably another 30 because you got to serve.
Yeah, but this is like an Airbnb thing.
Correct. Yeah.
Like this is not even a rental thing. And so sort of similar thing that happened to a buddy of mine, the guy I know. He was renting out a spot. This is classic stuff where like it's kind of like a trash person that's living there. They're like kind of trashing up the place. They're like, all right, you didn't pay rent. You got to get out. Like, yep. I'm not leaving. I'm just not leaving. And this is sort of like on the tail end of COVID too. So it's kind of shitty to deal with all this stuff. And it took him like 3 months to get him out. Right. And it might be one thing to be like, it's my renter, my person I'm renting to that's being a shithead. But you guys got to remember, in California anyways, if you just have a place, if you own a place, let's say that you just finished renovating, any random motherfucker can walk in, move their shit in, and you can't remove them for 3 months. Like, explain that to me. Like, how is that okay? Like, there's levels to the shit, and they're all kind of shitty. And it happened, and then it happened to another friend of mine who lives in a duplex. There's a person next to him, next door. Some 2 random people just moved into the house, and he called the landlord. And the landlord's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Landlord comes down. He goes, who the fuck are these people on the other side of this duplex? and there's just two randos living there. So here is an ethical question for you, Johnny. I mean, unethical, ethical. You are a landlord that owns a bunch of properties, and you're
Hmm.
dealing with a random person that decided to move into that house in the middle of the night. Okay.
Hmm.
Options are A, do it legally over 30 days or 90 days, and during those 90 days, they absolutely trash the fuck out of the house where you have to renovate it. Or B, in the middle of the night when they are out, throw all their shit out, change locks.
I would always. Well, first of all, I wish I would own some of these things, so then I know
Well,
I'd be
let's say
rich.
you did. Let's say you did.
But let's say, ethically speaking, you would always want to follow the law. But 9 times out of 10, I would probably go with option B. And here's the reason why. It's like, if I have an extra property or two, then yes, I would be like, hey, not only are you going to cost me more money, but now I can't provide, like, if we do this, we make money, right? But we're also providing something for potential people that would rent the place or staying. Like, that is the idea, right? Because that's what you want to do. So yes, I would do option B. The only time this would be the 1 out of 10 situation is, there's some sob story where I'm like, okay, I'll figure this out, do
Bro, they
this.
all have sob stories, though.
Understood. But
Make that shit up.
using your example, this wouldn't be one of the times. But I think for me, I always think, yeah, option B is the better option because, one, if you're costing, from a money standpoint, yes, you're costing me money. But from another standpoint, it's like, hey, like, I'm trying to actually rent this out. I don't feel like I would be a person that's gouging people, right? I'm just going to probably, market price it a little bit below. But people need places to live. Like, shit, like, you're just inevitably in the process. I'm not saying I don't have a kind heart. I'm just saying, like, this is why, you know.
I mean, Johnny, I'm letting you know after being a slumlord for a couple years,
Mhm.
that my kindness has worn out. And I consider myself a fairly kind person, but bro, I just could not do it. I could
Yeah.
not.
And we
It's a
have,
lie after lie after lie, right?
yeah, you being able to do that, our friend podcast John, he and Jill and his wife is able, has something that's similar, and he tells me sometimes horror stories about that too. So I totally am
It
not as sympathetic,
sucks. It
right?
sucks. So, anyways, I firmly believe. I think the law has to be amended. I think it was written with good intention, where it's like you don't want to have too much power to the landlords, but
Correct.
you can't have this overnight bullshit, man.
Yeah.
It's just this is one of the few times vigilante is the way to go. But fuck squatters. That is my rant for the day.
Before we get into what movies we're been watching this week, just want to let you guys know a couple things. One, you know, to the many dozens of listeners, because we don't have hundreds of listeners, but we're doing a couple of new things just to try to expand. And the editing process, at least for me, will get a little bit um, more tedious as we come along. But we're kind of expanding our galaxy. Around midweek, we will be releasing a little, we'll call it mini episodes. Jared and his friend are talking about Halloween or movies for Halloween coming up this year in different horror franchises. So I want you guys to check that out. I'm also releasing something. It's a little bit different. It is more of just me just meandering about a movie or two that we normally won't talk on the main show. Usually these movies are really indie movies that you probably is in the theaters for 1 week to make like $6,000 and then just leave probably the next week. So something for you guys to kind of check out. Or I'll be talking about certain movies that I would normally stream, but these guys, they don't have time for that shit. They got to stream movies that actually people do watch. It'll be easier to talk about. So check that out when they do release. It'd be great for us. And like Joe says at the end of each podcast, feedback is always great. So just let us know Is this the content that you guys like, or what else would you suggest? That being all said, Joe, what are some of the things you watched this past week?
So the last half of the week I was kind of busy, but the thing I've been watching a lot right now has been Solar Opposites. Justin Roiland, creator of Rick and Morty, effectively made like a side project with like the same animations with a different story. Um, I love it. I love it. I feel like they also took like writers from the Rick and Morty show and like also wrote this stuff. I don't know for sure. I did binge it a little bit. I think over like 3 days I watched a season. And I'm trying not to do that because I think there's like 3 or 4 seasons of this. I'm trying to really slow it down because I know that I'm like kid with candy with this kind of stuff, man. I just like just munch on it too hard,
Yeah.
and I I don't burn myself out. I just get to the ending way too fucking fast. So last week I talked about the fact that I wanted to just like open my horizons of watching stuff that I've been meaning to watch. And this is one of the things I've been like, oh, Solar Opposites, I should definitely check it out. So I finally did. So my goal for the next week or two is to sort of just check out a couple things. Check out a couple movies that I've been meaning to watch. Check out a couple of this. Yes, that sort of thing. And that's what I've been doing. So that's really it for the week. What about you?
Outside of baseball playoffs, which the Padres have now advanced to the next round, which they will inevitably just lose to the Dodgers. But the fact they got to the next round is great. Which, by the way, playoff baseball in this format, best out of three with all these wild cards, actually makes baseball exciting. 100 something odd games, blah, 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 that can get really tedious and boring. But I think these guys are starting to realize that, hey, playoffs is where it's at, dude. Like, there's a reason why, the NBA thrives during the playoff season and why, the NFL with the single elimination football season when the playoffs start is great as well. So, in terms of movies, there's a couple ones, and I told these guys before, but I'm trying to get to a cap where I can watch and review movies. So last year, I think I reviewed 60 something movies for 2021. You know, the goal is 75, the stretch is 100. So I think I can
Jeez.
do it. Now, that being said, for people that are avid movie watchers and are on Letterbox, if you're going to come in here and tell me, ooh, I've watched 400 movies, I'm like, look, I'm only counting movies that released this year. I've rewatched movies, stuff like that. I don't count a rewatch of a movie that came out 3 years ago part of your viewing list of like, oh, that's part of my movie count list. No, dog. Like, that's not happening. So we'll see how that goes. So there's a couple ones. Amazon, there's a documentary called The Sound of 007. Talks about the music, the soundtrack, kind of like the theme songs. It's a pretty solid documentary. I'm hesitant to use documentary because it's more of a puff piece for James Bond more than anything else, since Amazon owns the rights to all those movies. So there's that one. I watched DC League of Super Pets, the animated movie where The Rock is Crypto, Superman's dog, and he has to band a bunch of pets together to save the world. Let me tell you something, you guys. This movie did the story of Batman v Superman better than Batman v Superman did. uh, it's frivolous fun. I thought it was fine. Plus, as much as people lament Kevin Hart and The Rock together, them together chemistry wise, it's the same shtick, but it works. It's fun. These guys know each other, so, and the fact that it's animated makes it a little bit better. Movie that we potentially were going to talk about that we completely scrapped was The Munsters. Let me tell you guys something about this movie, and I think Joe will chime in.
Jesus.
What a, I did not watch a lot of The Munsters that was on TV, but I know people love the show. I know the basic premise of the show because I've seen a couple episodes. But my God, having Rob Zombie direct a PG movie was just, I gave it 1 star simply because I think there is a lot of costume designs in that movie that looked really cool, but it didn't fit the tone of that movie. It's a PG movie. It is supposedly a comedy. Did you laugh at that movie at all, Joe?
No, it was very like slapstick humor, but like also keep in mind I don't like this style of movie to begin with, even if it was good.
Yeah.
So
I
I'm good. It was trash.
Here's one of the thing about this movie, and I hate to say this. I thought I saw the worst movie of 2022 with
Oh boy,
Pinocchio. My God, did the monsters say, "Hold my beer"? Let
dude,
me-
I
so
think I think Monsters is worse, like objectively
it
worse.
it is and I think it tried to be a sitcom, but those type of sitcoms have a laugh track, right? It's hard because sometimes you need the encouragement of laughing for some of these things. The fact that it had no laugh track, and I can tell where the jokes were supposed to land, it just absolutely just fell flat on his face.
I don't know why they made this.
Yeah.
I don't know why
So
they made this.
that was bad. And then I got a chance to finally watch the 355. It came out in January, so it came out for this year. I just had, I just didn't get a chance to see it. It's the action women led cast with Jessica Chastain, Lupita Nyong'o, Diane Kruger, and I thought it was an okay movie. The problem I have with the movie is that the action sequences, they needed a better director. Simon Kinberg is a guy, this is his second movie that he's ever directed. Anyone, you want to take a guess what his first movie was?
No idea.
Dark Phoenix. So
What?
it was the last X-Men movie that came out that tried to do the Dark Phoenix saga. He is an incredible mind. The movies, the X-Men movies that we did like, he did write the script for, right? Like X2, Days of Future Past. Like he had a lot of part of it. But as a director, mm, no, they needed someone else. Because like I was like, oh, I like the premise, but the action sequences, it's like shit. Like it's just, I would say that James, it took for better or worse, the Bourne movies is what action movies kind of relate to, right? It's fast cutting.
I
It's
like
supposed
it.
to be
Yeah.
action.
Yeah.
Sometimes when that happens, there has to be an energy that's there. Because if the energy isn't there, then my mind goes when I'm watching this is like, this this is the block set. If you're punching someone here, but you're cutting this, it doesn't seem right. The geography is off. And so you need a good director to be able to close in that geography. It just make me feel like, oh shit, this action is like tense. And this movie could have benefited from an actual action director to it. So, but yeah, those are kind of the movies that I've been watching over the past week. Um, Before we get into the other two movies, I was gonna go through like Reddit and just find some random thing, but because I usually would go on like the Hollywood Reporter and be like, okay, what's the big news of the day? Maybe we can talk about it. Have you listened or not heard? Have you read about Kanye West?
The
What he?
anti-Semitic shit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The
So
fact that he got.
oh my god, dude. So for if you guys don't know, like he posted on Twitter, which is now suspended on Twitter. I don't know for how long. And then he was limited in his response in on Facebook because he kind of precursed this. But he tweeted from Kanye West, "When I wake up, I'm going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people. The funny thing is I actually can't be anti-Semitic because black people are actually Jews also. You guys have toyed with me and tried to blackball anyone who ever opposes your agenda." And then
Yeah, man, he's going
I
off the rails, bro.
dude like, and then we have a lot of celebrities that tweeted out like how inflammatory that is. People like Jamie Lee Curtis, Sarah Silverman, among others. Michael Rappaport, which that guy's always good for a profanic rant. But do you have any thoughts on this? Because here's the thing, he's it sucks because like we grew up. Well, this shows our age. Like it's kind of like we grew up in high school with Kanye West, right? College dropout, late registration. Uh, what was his last one? Graduation, 808 and Heartbreak, and like My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. I think those are some of the greatest hip hop albums or trilogy of that you can talk about this guy. But like ever since whatever it is, like I can't even take him seriously anymore. It kind of sucks.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's necessarily. So the one thing I kind of have to start off with is the fact that is Kanye a stable person even from the start? Because there's a lot of people out there that are extremely talented artists and stuff, but they have some sort of weird tick or something, and we tend to ignore that because the music would override everything. And I've heard about how Kanye got started and discovered, and he pretty much smashed it on day one, sort of thing, with all like the singles and all that kind of stuff. But it's just I don't know if it's because he's worried that he can't ever become the old Kanye of popular, even though I think that his last couple albums were fine. Like I mean, I think a lot of people agree that Kanye will never be old Kanye, but that could be said for a lot of rap artists and that sort of thing. But in terms of what's going on now, I also saw the thing where it's like White Lives Matter with Candace Parker, like that
Gosh.
shit, and it's like I don't know if it's because he's like I'm trying to see if he's like being big brain in terms of like he and Kardashians and all that kind of stuff effectively live off of drama. Like that's their bread and butter. So like this is incredible drama that he's stirring up. And I'm trying to see whether or not it's a good idea for him to kind of go down this path like this just cuz you're it's like two steps backwards is one step forward whatever he's trying to accomplish. And I still don't get unless he's like one of those guys that just kind of does things without thinking, and we kind of got a little bit of that during a Hurricane Katrina, where it's like Bush doesn't care about black people or something, or that whole thing again. Um, and so I look, and me just trying to be like a kind of really reasonable guy. I really hope for everyone's sake and Kanye's sake that he just kind of gets it together. Like he doesn't do anything like absolutely nutty. He just I would say just take it easy and focus on the music. Even if you do pull like a Rihanna and don't make music for a long ass time and then pull something off, or like do like a Super Bowl show in 2025 or whatever it is, I think people are a lot more forgiving than we give them credit for. And if you just shut the fuck up for a little bit, and honestly, he doesn't technically even need to apologize because that's how short the people are like goldfish. If you just shut the fuck up, don't say anything, make a great album, believe it or not, people will kind of forgive you for it. Not to say that's the best way to do it, but I just don't know. Kanye's going to continue digging his own grave, and he might be one of those guys who are too proud to admit that he was being stupid. So that's sort of what it is, and that's how I feel about it.
All right, you guys. So we'll switch topics and we'll talk about the two movies that we both saw. But let's start the one with Vengeance. Right now, currently streaming on Peacock. If you guys have that subscription, it's from IMDb synopsis. A writer played by BJ Novak from New York City attempts to solve the murder of a girl he hooked up with and travels down south to investigate the circumstances of her death and discover what happened to her. I remember going to the theaters. This was like the last week because I knew usually in theaters when I look at the show times. Normally, most movies that release, they'll have multiple show times. As weeks
Yeah,
go on, you can
yeah,
see the
yeah.
reduction of show times. So I could tell there was only 2 show times for this, and I'm like, you know what? It's probably going to leave next week because it's a um, indie movie.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember seeing the commercial trailer for it. I just only remember B.J. Novak and Boyd Holbrook, who most people know from Narcos, who's played across Pedro Pascal in this movie. I thought, oh, this would be a pretty cool conceit. Like, there's a guy that is a writer going to Texas to want to be the next big podcast, and he's trying to uncover a mystery where it just sounds like this girl just overdosed, but his family thinks otherwise, right? And he thinks this is like a great revelation in there. First of all, I didn't know Ashton Kutcher was in this movie.
I mean,
And I
it's
looked at
a
the
nice
poster.
little
I looked at the
surprise.
poster, and I was like, "Oh, it does say Ashton Kutcher's in this movie." I will tell you, once I left that theater, I thought, "Oh shit!" Like, I feel like there's a lot of parts in this movie that were a little too smart. Like, it was trying to be too um, on the nose about certain things with how we consume information and what we want to believe, especially when it comes to big liberal cities like New York, LA, compared to red, small rural states like where they are in Texas. That being said, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I thought this movie was so good. BJ Novak has a good ear for how people talk and how to propel a story forward with being smart about it. The opening credits to this movie, um, saying everything 100 with John Mayer, I thought was some of the most annoying and funniest shit I've seen in theaters or in movies this year. Because after I watched that, then I paid attention to how everyone talked. I'm like, oh shit, everyone does say 100. Like, what the fuck? Like, what is going on here? Um, the murder mystery itself was really good. I thought the twist in the middle of this movie was damn near excellent. And when I say I think it's like a little bit too smart for some people, is because it's trying to make this, idea that like there's stereotypes about how, what liberal people think and what uh, more conservative people think. But it melded real nicely because I love the characters. I think the grandma character is probably one of the one of the funnier characters in this. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. What did you think here, Joe?
Um, it I okay. So I like the movie all through and through. I like the twist of the drugs. I like the twist of BJ Novak suddenly just going bam, 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 bam. Right. Spoilers, I guess. I mean, we said spoilers, not a big deal. I think that Ashton Kutcher played his role very well as kind of just like some hippie like dude that makes a bunch of money that kind of like understands how things are in Texas or that part of Texas or whatever it is.
Yeah,
Um, I think that the family that played the Texas family did it really well. My and then I think the John Mayer bit, the reason I didn't find it to be kind of cringe, I mean, like these are, I think that's very accurate to how people talk when they're like have a little buzz going on, they're just kind of shooting the shit with his buddies. I think that's very very accurate. I didn't expect John Mayer to be in it, but again, very accurate. Um, and the whole story is great. I just think that BJ Novak, though, in my opinion, excellent writer, kind of a bland actor. Um, and and I know I'm probably comparing him to like all, like kind of like A-list celebrities and that sort of thing, and because he he basically played Ryan, I think, and so like
a different version of Ryan.
yeah, so like it's not. You know how we talk about a lot of actors. Let's take the gold standard, Daniel Day Lewis.
Uh-huh.
You'll put him somewhere, and you're like, I forgot for a second that's Daniel Day Lewis. It's the guy that he's trying to be. You
Yeah,
know, there will be blood, and then he'll be the president. Like from the Civil War. Like it's like all over the place now with. And that sort of, and I know it's unfair to just be like, hey, let's take this person that's hasn't as much experience and just suddenly compare him to the greatest of all time. But I think with I almost call him Ryan BJ Novak, it's a very it just kind of fell flat for that kind of stuff. But I think because it was written and directed by him and the movie was excellent, that goes to show that I think as a director and a writer, it's fantastic. I just don't know how I feel about him as a starter is all.
No, I hear you.
Like a starring, first billing actor is all.
Got it. No, I totally get it. I think for this movie, I think at least for me it worked. Yes, it's hard to not see Ryan from The Office without him in this movie. But man, like I just think that like the writing and how this movie kept moving. I think sometimes movies take forever to start, and I think there was good enough set time in the movie to kind of know who this character is, what his aspirations are, which is like hoity-toity. God, I want to be a great podcaster. You know, and so I thought the acting for him was fine. Ashton Kutcher is the standout of this movie. He was barely there for like 20 minutes at most, but man, he was so damn good.
He was
in this
smooth.
movie.
He was just
Yeah.
like overall smooth and just like so nonchalant about the fact that she just died. He's like, yeah, that's what happens.
Yeah.
And it almost like also he also just sort of accepts his death. At the end, like, all right.
Oh yeah. So here's the thing. I think this is kind of where this movie kind of went over the top from being really good to being probably one of the 10 best movies I've seen this year, at least so far. That ending, it actually really caught me off guard because I didn't think he was going to shoot him.
Dude, that's when I was texting you. I was like, what? No, what a twist. Exactly that, yeah.
Yeah, and then he knew that like, oh yeah, they'll cover for me. I'm all like, what the fuck is going on in Texas, guys? Like, but yes, if you guys have a chance, it's on Peacock. I can't highly recommend it more.
It's such a good recommend. It is
Yeah.
wonderful. Shit, I guess people that are listening kind of get spoilers, but like recommend it to people around you that haven't watched it, sort of thing.
Still watch it. I mean, it's absolutely a fantastic movie. What kind of letter grade would you give this movie?
I would give it like an A-.
Yeah.
I think it sort of hit all the stuff. It could just be a hair better, but again, it's with the echelon of stuff that I would highly recommend to all my friends.
Yeah. For me, it's an A, guys. Like I said, I think as of right now, it's one of the 10 best movies I've seen so far this year.
Yeah.
And
totally fair.
It might slide out if I continue watching all these movies, but it is a very fun movie to watch. Speaking of fun, Smile also came out in theaters, and did you watch it in a crowded theater, Joe?
I did. I watched it in Atlanta.
Yeah. Where did you at least get some good seats, or did you have to sit like really?
So here's what happened. As you guys may or may not know, I currently live in like a really rural area. So if I want to watch a movie, I'm like, let's look at the movie times. Oh, 7:30. I'll just show up and watch it. And that's how it is. And I've been used to that. Okay. And then finally, when I was in Atlanta, big city, I'll be like, all right, a 9:30 showing. We'll just show up and watch it. We show up, and then like people are leaving. I'm like, what the fuck's going on? I go in there and go, 9:30, sold out. I'm like, oh shit. 10:30, sold out. I'm like, oh fuck. So we had to drive to a different location, buy tickets online to confirm that seats are fairly free. But downside is it was kind of a shittier movie theater where like the seats were all like old and trashy, And this is, I guess, me being that first world palms asshole, but I really need those nice seats to truly enjoy that movie, Yeah. And man, I wish I didn't, but it was a very, very crowded. It was a crowded theater. The one thing I have to comment on that is that there are far too many kids in this movie theater with me. I'm pretty sure this is rated R. And
it is a rated R movie, yes.
Yeah, it was very much a couple. It was like, so what happened was if you look at the whole, I think everyone was black except for me and my friend because I guess Atlanta. But there was a bunch of couples. It was fine. Unfortunately, the people behind me were like 8 like high school kids that are really loud, and then
Yeah.
there was like at least like 8 or 9 kids that are like, you are 10 years old and you shouldn't be watching this. I mean, look, man, I'm not in any place to kind of tell parents what to do, but like that's a little young, is what
Right.
I'm thinking. But it was a pretty full movie theater otherwise.
Good. I was in a pretty full movie theater, and I think this movie deserves to be watched in a full movie theater. So I'll read the synopsis a little bit. After witnessing a bizarre, traumatic incident involving a patient, Dr. Rose Cotter, who's played by Sosie Bacon, who I just learned is the daughter of Kira Sedgwick and Kevin Bacon, starts experiencing frightening occurrences that she can't explain. Rose must confront her troubling past in order to survive and escape her horrifying new reality. Again, you guys, I'm going to say spoilers in advance because we probably talk about some of them. But Joe, what did you think of the movie?
The movie was awesome. Again, spoilers. So again, if you're gonna stop here, I recommend the movie. That's all I can say. Um, I when I was watching the movie, I it had all the elements of a scary movie that I liked. It had some jump scares, it has the suspense, it has like the supernatural. Cal Penn, I think, did an excellent job. Um, and I think so. It's Susie or Sosie, whatever. Sosie Bacon as the lead did a wonderful job of a person that is slowly going insane, which is what you want, right? Excellent job of that. While I was watching the movie, I got a lot of like, "Oh hell no!" like in the audience, or like, "Bro, why the fuck are you going in there? Leave!" And at first, I was a little annoyed because we talked about like, "Oh hey, we shouldn't, we should try to get a nice, quiet, you know, a theater. We shouldn't have people yelling at the screen, all that kind of stuff." And that was, and over time, I'm like, man, I fucking agree with it. What is this dumbass shit they're doing? Like, what the fuck? So there's two things that really annoyed me. Again, everything was fantastic. Okay, the things that annoyed me were: one, I hate the trope of I have no time to explain. Like that's the dumbest thing ever. In one scene, the Susie Bacon goes to her cop ex boyfriend, played by Kyle Gallner or something. He goes, "What's going on? Can you please look up this person? Because I think there's something going on." Okay, he looks it up. Connected suicide. Like, tell me what's going on. I have no time to explain. What do you mean? It's like a 4-second conversation. Like I what? I don't like that at all. And the second thing was at the very end, the monster takes over Susie's body and she's about to commit suicide and all that kind of stuff. But the boyfriend comes in, kicks the door down, and realizes what's happening. This is the other dude that realizes what the pattern is. Just look away. Just leave. Just look away and leave. Like
Well,
I
I think she never explained that to him. Remember, like they were
no, but he saw the string of things happening. Like
correct, but
as a cop or detective, you're like, this person watched this person commit suicide, then committed suicide in front of somebody else, and this should continue to change. I'm gonna walk away. And so the other trope I don't like is I was just trying to help. Like that sort of thing.
yeah,
Like, you don't have to. It's
yeah,
fine. Just fucking leave, man. Get the fuck out of there.
right.
So I personally think if the ending was such that he realizes what's going on and then immediately runs out the house or something and like, ends the cycle or whatever it is, I think that'd be interesting. But other than that, great movie.
Yeah. So I think the only explanation I can have is that I remember, if I remember that scene correctly, they were, the guy in the prison explained it to her, and then as they were leaving, she never explained it to the cop. She's like, "Oh, he didn't tell me whatever it is," right? So the idea is that even though they witness a suicide, it's because it's traumatic, and that's where the trauma comes in. And this movie, the overlying theme is trauma and how mental illness kind of evades, like because when I watched the trailer to this movie, I remember thinking to myself, the fuck is this? it's just a smile. Like, whoa, what's going on here? And so taking such a ridiculous premise, but turning it into how people deal with traumatic events, what they experience, I thought was really smart. Now, that being said, it took me a day or two to be like, okay, I did enjoy this movie. And here's the reason why. It's because, like Joe said, which, by the way, watching this movie in a big theater, having those reactions actually makes this movie even more fun because it's like, like Joe said, we're thinking the same thing. It's like, no, hell no. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, but usually horror tropes do that. But at the same time, I think that's one of the reactions that they kind of place in there to kind of go through. But that being said, I would say like the reason why I had to really sleep and think about it is because you know Sosie Bacon, who plays Dr. Rose Cotter, is really good, but the character itself kind of like bugged the shit out of me, right? I know it's about trauma. I know that she builds walls around herself to make sure no one gets close to her because she doesn't want to be able to share, because that's something that's built up because she doesn't trust anyone. Um, to me, that makes it, when I look at that view and I watch these usually horror movies, I want to root for the lead to win. And it took me a while to think about it because, like, I can't, in conscious, all the stuff that she's doing made me not want to root for her. But I also now, like, when I sat and thought about it, I was like, okay, I get it. Like, she's going through this. She doesn't, what is this one past, that is haunting her? It's because her mom, you know, is ODing in front of her, and her being so traumatized, she doesn't call the cops, right? Basically, she feels guilt for having her mom dying because she couldn't do anything. Uh, but I thought the horror tropes that they introduced in the movie, for the most part, worked so well because it made the ending so satisfying. And I'll tell you why. It's because there are a lot of different moments in this movie where she has a different image and it goes back to the present. And so, you they set this up so well. And like I said, spoilers ahead. So, I mean, if you're listening this far, I really hope you watch the movie.
Yeah, that's all right.
Really, I hope you watch this movie. But I was just thinking to myself, oh shit, like, well, when was it what was the first time that they did that? It was, oh, she was like getting a call in the house, and they're like, "Oh, did you set your alarm off?" Blah blah blah, and it's all like turn around, and it's like, "Oh shit!" Like someone is calling her, and then it zooms back again, and it's just the phone ringing. So it's like it kind of messes with how you perceive it. There's one time where she is told that, like, hey, if she kills somebody and someone watches her kill someone and they're traumatized, the trauma gets passed to them and she doesn't have to worry. And so she has this knife and she goes into the hospital, and there's one of these patients and she's just stabbing this patient back and forth. And I'm like, oh my God. And Calpen's like, oh, what the fuck is going on here? And then it zooms back out and you realize it's just a figment of her imagination. Why do I bring this up? Because the ending got me really good, right?
It was
I was like,
really good.
I got it really good. Like they set everything up, and it's like, the house is burning. She thinks she defeats the monster. You come out, and you're just like, she drives back home to her ex boyfriend, and the ex boyfriend's all like, "I'll have you here forever," and I'm like, "Oh shit!" Like, well, what did this go? And it zooms back, and you realize the house wasn't burned at all. She'd never left, and she realizes that the boyfriend is coming now because she can hear the phone, and I'm just like, oh shit. And so the whole ending happens, and I thought that was like absolutely, like, my mind was like actually like, oh shit, this is actually really good. Like, you guys, like, and it's one of those instances, right? Like normally we see the good guys win and we want to root for them, but I think in this one it's just that she dealt with her trauma. Even though she dealt with her trauma, she accepted the fact with that trauma. She kind of accepted it a little too late. And so that monster, whatever it is, wins, right? And then you have the ending that goes there. I just thought this movie is, you know, it's it's not the best horror movie I've seen this year. I think Barbarian's probably the best one I've seen so far because that movie was bonkers as well. But this was really fun. Like, I'm very happy to see this in a movie that was with a lot of people in it and people reacting. Because there were some genuine like haha like moments, and I was just laughing, and I was just like, okay, just to relieve some of that tension. So um, I think this is a solid B plus movie. What do you give this?
Man, I think I'm also gonna give this an A minus, just like the last movie. I just think that in terms of horror, it's a little bit challenging to do, and because of that, and the fact that it did it so well, and they used those time lapses so well, and everything else you mentioned, I'm all for it. I think they did. I think they deserved all the praise and A minus. Wonderful, wonderful job.
Perfect. All right, Joe, tell us where they can find us.
All right, guys, you can find us at Film Lovers GTTG. You guys know about this. Tell us what you think about the movies. I think hopefully everyone can go check it out, like our recommendation said, and not spoiler free, all that kind of stuff. But it's been a very long time since we had like a 2 movie special, and they were both great. It's usually some shit where one was absolute trash and the other one's really good. That seems like the common thing to do. But man, it was such a great movies for both of them. I was very, very satisfied, very happy. Never at any point that I feel like I wasted my time or anything like that. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. Highly recommend. But let us know your comments, questions, concerned at Film Lovers GTTG.
You guys can follow me on Twitter, Letterbox, at JNO11JNGO11. Jared will be back next week. You can follow him for all things wrestling at JLuthy, JLUTHY. Don't follow him Instagram because he ain't going to follow you back. Next week, it finally ends, or so we think. We're going to talk about Halloween Ends, and hopefully we'll be able to discuss the Halloween franchise and what we think of this new set trilogy from David Gordon Green and Danny McBride. Until next week, we'll talk to you guys later.